Welcome to the Marc Steiner Show right here on the Real News Network, and I am Marc Steiner. Good to have you all with us once again. You know, it's almost hard to fathom that the system of racist capitalist exploitation of prison labor, which has been going on since the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865, despite the battles on Reconstruction to end it, and brought back with vigor in 1877, that system of exploitation is still very much with us. And it's an industry that's worth billions of dollars. It affects the entire country. People who are incarcerated or exploited in prisons across America, both private and public prisons, and all that has been going on. The question is, what do you do about it? How do you stop it? How do you deal with the profits they're making? And how do you deal with the situation that we're faced with? Well, some students at the University of Florida decided they have an answer. They decided they were enough with this exploitation, and they rose up together. They and other human rights organizations decided that it was time to end that exploitation with the University of Florida's complicity with organizations like Aramac, and they went after that. Now, Aramac is contracted by the university to use prison-based labor to produce food sold to the students. And they not only exploit those who are in prison, they exploit other workers with low wages as well. So they got together to say this has to end. And the president of the university, President Fuchs, said they would end the use of prison labor at the university, but the contract with Aramac has not ended. And neither has the student struggle to end that cooperation with prison labor. And today we're joined by three of those student leaders. Ava Kaplan is a current undergraduate at the University of Florida and a member of the Dream Defenders. Jerome is also a current undergraduate in the University of Florida. And Will Boose is with us as well, an alumnus of the university, now in graduate school in Atlanta, and a member of the Coalition to Abolish Prison Slavery. And welcome, the three of you. Good to have you with us. So it's great to have you all with us. So take us back for a second. We can talk a bit about the heart of prison labor and what it means, and why it's so prevalent. But talk about where the struggle began in Florida. And I don't know, should I start with you, Will, since you graduated? Start with you. So talk about how this struggle began in Florida and what the essence of it is.
Sure. So at the University of Florida specifically is where I'll focus this, and in the community of Gainesville, there's several organizations that have been working on this topic for a long time. You have Florida Prisoner Solidarity, previously Gainesville IWalk. You also have Dream Defenders, who's been active on this for a pretty long time as well. And there's been students who have been connecting the struggles for food justice and the struggles against the prison industrial complex for a long time. So Aramark, for example, has been working as the food service provider at the University of Florida since I think like the 1990s, mid-1990s, continuously. They've been there that entire time. During those same years and even prior, the University of Florida has also been directly exploiting enslaved prison labor in their agricultural fields through the Agricultural College at the University of Florida, IFAS. So this has been a struggle that's been ongoing for years. I would probably credit Florida Prisoner Solidarity as the main organization that's been working against this. In 2018, they successfully got the city of Gainesville and Alachua County to cease using enslaved prison labor. But the University of Florida that operates within that city and within that county had not stopped their direct exploitation. So in the past semester, in the fall 2020 semester, the Coalition to Abolish Prison Slavery formed, one of the co-founders of that organization alongside Salil. And basically, we tried to unite as many social justice organizations in Gainesville as possible, Dream Defenders being one of the most amazing of those organizations, to unite students and community members to work directly against the University of Florida to pressure them to cease exploiting prison slave labor. They have done that. They capitulated in September of last year after months of direct pressure via social media, phones, apps, email campaigns, etc. But they have still continued to work with Aramark, who contracts with 300 or 600 prisons, who has exploited prison slavery themselves, etc.
So let's move on to where we are. I mean, and pick up every by them and turn to Jerry, just to talk a bit about where you are now, because apparently the Aramark contract is not done. I mean, and they use prison labor across the country, as we were just told. So talk about where it is at this moment, especially given that you're organizing this in the midst of COVID, which means you can't kind of go knocking on dorms to say, hey, come talk to us. So talk a bit about what's going on.
That's definitely been a challenge, is trying to organize this all virtually, especially during a boycott. But I think luckily, since what we are doing is the boycott, they're already hurting because way less students are on campus. So we're kind of hitting them where it hurts right now. But in terms of this issue, I know myself and a lot of other people kind of got involved with kind of viewing University of Florida's relationship with the prison industrial complex over the summer, specifically after President Fox, in a June 18th statement to the UF community, said this very strange and very calculated quote that was something like, "The symbolism of inmate labor does not align with the University of Florida's values, and therefore the practice will no longer continue." And when I saw him make that statement, I was like, okay, if you're saying this is true, if you're making this promise, if you're saying that these are the University of Florida's principles, like, I expect to see you take action to follow through on this. And with CAPS and Dream Defenders and other student organizations, we kind of have been uniting to be almost like a watchdog to the University of Florida, because unfortunately, even though they said that these are their principles, unless they have external pressure from the students in the community like us, they aren't going to follow through on them. And we can see that based on the fact that they made a bunch of other promises in that statement over the summer that they have yet to follow through on.
Like what?
So another example is they said that they were going to change the names of buildings on campus that were named after racists, like documented racists, and that has yet to happen. They've definitely established committees and task force to look into it, but we have yet to see any fruits of that labor, which is kind of where we've come in, because it's, like I said, obvious that they aren't going to do it themselves. So not only did they use prison slavery physically on campus, which due to grassroots organizing, thanks to CAPS, which Will is a leader of, that's done from campus, but they contract with corporations like Aramark, who are just completely tied to the prison industrial complex, and not only use prison slave labor, but like Will said, like operate within 600 prisons in the US and are just like very much profiting off of the entire system of incarceration in our country. So as a University of Florida student, I don't want to be participating in that system when I'm buying food on campus, when I'm like in the student union getting a Starbucks drink to get me through my next class. I don't want to be giving money to this corporation. So that's kind of where we're at right now and why we're trying to take a stand against it.
So, Jane, talk a bit about where you see the struggle going on at this moment. I saw you, just before we went on the air together today, I was looking at these notes and saw you on Instagram making this kind of very concise and clear plea about what this prison labor thing really means. So I'm very curious, a couple of things. Let me just start with this question here. What is your sense of what the student reaction is to this? I mean, I understand activists saying no and kind of organize students to say this has to end, the exploitation has to end. But talk a bit about what your interaction with fellow students is in terms of organizing and what you've seen.
Wow. It's been great. It's been real receptive. On campus, I'm a part of a lot of Black organizations. For example, Black Student Union. I'm a part of BMAN, Black Male Excellence Network, and I just work with the Black community a lot at UF. And I would say definitely as a collective, we're enthralled, we're angry. It's just disgusting. I think people do recognize that the stigma that we have as Black people is very much aligned with prison and very much aligned with the system of prison that we have in America. And from a young age, as a Black man, you have to learn how to maneuver around America to avoid going to prison for the littlest of things. Meanwhile, all of the other identities in America are very largely unaffected by the huge industry and the huge system of prisons that's taking advantage of us. You know what I'm saying? So I think as in the Black community of UF, we see this, and we see that we don't want to be a part of a university that takes advantage of this horrible process.
So I'm just curious, in the struggle that you all are in around this, and how you see it ending. I mean, Aramark is a huge corporation, very powerful, and it does and has a history of using prison labor to create its projects, and also in the struggles against its workers itself, whether on university campus, other places. So, and I think about this in terms of the historical context that I opened this conversation with you all, just in terms of how long this has been going on. I mean, the 13th Amendment says it's okay to exploit prison workers, is what it's basically trying to tell us. And that battle has been going on for a while. And Reconstruction really, when they killed that experiment in our democracy, it unleashed this prison enslavement system throughout the South and expanded across the country. And so it's a huge, powerful industry, billions and billions of dollars. So talk about where you see that struggle going in terms of the campus and how you end it.
I think what is extremely important to note that this organization and us as students, we're more against prison labor as itself as an entity than UF being tied with prison labor, if that makes sense. We are more against the process in the entire system as a whole instead of just UF being a part of it, if I might add. And I think that it's important to understand the concept entirely. I study sustainability at UF, and we talk about we talk about this type of thing a lot. How to make and sustain change. As the process ending, I think it's very important to take away their important ties. I think it's important to take away Aramark's important linkages to maintaining the process as itself. I think if we remove UF's ties from Aramark, I think if we remove this other organization's ties from Aramark, and if we keep doing that, I think that's what kind of slowly dismantles the system as itself. Not to mention, as a student population and as youth in America, the more we're educated on how the world works, and the more we're educated how, as Americans, we take advantage of people and manipulate people in ways that we're not even aware of, like in where we put our money and the conversations that we have, and where we go to, where we attend. I think it's very important just as a population to understand that. So I think those two things tied together with just the individual level being educated about the cause, and individual level about being educated about where your actions go to and where your actions perpetuate, but also in the industrial and more macro scale, where we're dismantling these huge corporations and huge industries one by one, taking away their most powerful and their most their largest sources of income.
So building off of that, I think to your question, Mark, like where we see this ending, Aramark obviously is a massive corporation. They not only work at 600 prisons, they also work at hundreds of college campuses around the country. One of those college campuses, Florida State University, it's actually where I went to undergrad. When I was undergrad there, they worked with Aramark. They went away from Aramark. Just now, they're actually opening a new contract with Aramark. So let's say at the University of Florida, we successfully boot Aramark off the campus for the first time in a couple decades. That's amazing. That's a big win. But at the same time, they're getting another multi-million-dollar contract with Florida State University. So that's one thing to contextualize it. But then where I'm going with that is I would like to see this struggle continue to expand to multiple college campuses, and it has. So there's a group of students at the University of Central Florida who have been working for food justice that we've been in contact with, Florida Gulf Coast University, and then at Florida State University as well. And even last night, after Jerry made this amazing video, someone DM'd us from Florida State University, DM'd the Coalition of Abolish Prison Slavery Instagram page and said, I want to fight against this at FSU. What do I do? So things like that, and kind of like getting this message out there that students can work directly against the university, that students can pressure the university. That's been the goal with CAPS. I think that's a lot of the goal of Dream Defenders, who has squads throughout the state of Florida. So trying to push this struggle beyond just one campus and to work against Aramark and corporations like Aramark at multiple places. So at the University of Florida, we've successfully, as students, as a community, successfully pressured them to stop directly exploiting prison slave labor. Now it's the Aramark contract. If we get with that, then it's getting them to divest their endowment from the prison industrial complex. So there's a lot we can do at one place, but at the same time that we're doing that, it's trying to get that to spread as much as we can.
Ava?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that it opens up this question, which has really been what's been motivating me to stand up against this issue specifically, is the role of the institution of universities in making progress in our country. Because I think that a lot, like over the summer and in this statement that I keep referencing, there's all this talk about systemic racism, and universities want to take a stance against systemic racism. But when you really look at it, universities all over the country are like some of the main perpetrators of systemic racism through not just these contracts, but also just, you could list a million ways that they kind of reinforce racial hierarchy and benefit from white supremacy. And I think that a goal of mine is to kind of open up students' eyes to how our relationships with universities and how these institutions are part of this general system of white supremacy, and how, as students, it's our responsibility when we partake in these institutions to think about how we can resist and how we can change that. Because this Aramark contract is one thing that we can concretely kick off our campus and take a stand against. And I think that if students across the universities in America can kind of connect the way that our colleges reinforce white supremacy, reinforce the prison industrial complex, and start like really pressuring change of these institutions, I think that would be a huge success in general. You know what I mean?
So let me ask this last final question here. Maybe a couple things popped in my head as y'all were talking. Ava, it was like, do you see this as the beginning of a national movement on campuses to stop?
I would love that. I mean, I don't want to say that I see it as the beginning of a national movement. And I think a lot of people have been doing this work for a really long time. So this definitely isn't a beginning. But I think that if I'm feeling optimistic about how more students, more people my age are really trying to educate themselves on these issues, if kind of this can be a blueprint for maybe how other students can get involved with these issues at their college campuses, that would be amazing. Like that's the goal, I think.
Yeah, and I really like what you said. I think that's extremely important to add that we're not the first. This problem has existed for a long time, way before we were even conceived. You know, so I think it's real important not to discount anybody who did the work before us, but also we have to reconsider how we think, how we live and how we think of other people, and how we interact with other Americans is what I'm trying to say. I think that as Americans, we're almost so like funneled into our own space that we forget that prisoners are our community too. There's families with fathers and uncles and brothers who've gone to prison for maybe some for heinous crimes, maybe some for negligible crimes, but are still largely affected and manipulated by this process. I think as Americans, the fact that this is almost like a new idea and the fact that this is almost like, wow, this is going on shows how ignorant we are and how selfish we are as people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that this has been a problem that should affect everybody and affect everybody in America, whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you're Asian, or whether you're Hispanic, etc. It should affect everybody in every identity. And I think that's just really important to note. You know what I'm saying? Like we need to realize that we're newly being educated about this process, but it's been going on really forever.
So I guess finally, Will, maybe you can answer this very quickly. Do you think that this struggle will actually end with Aramark being pushed off a campus?
I think it will. I think this boycott, I think the student pressure will be successful. I think Aramark will be kicked off the campus. And then tying that to the previous question, I see that as a continuation of a national movement that's been going on for decades, for centuries, that's been going as long as there's been white supremacy and anti-Blackness in the United States. There's been people fighting against it. And specifically within the Gainesville community, like I've mentioned, Florida Prisoner Solidarity, I highly recommend anyone listening to this check them out. Anyone who listens to this, sees this, look more deeply into Dream Defenders. That's, like I said, they have squads in cities throughout all of Florida. So by no means is this the first, but in our specific struggle, yes, I think we'll be able to kick Aramark off of campus.
Well, I'd like to really stay in touch with you all and see where this goes. I mean, I know that, as we said earlier, COVID makes this struggle more difficult than it would be, but it's really an important one. And if you all are successful in this, it could be a snowball, even in Florida. It could be a snowball in terms of, sorry, that was really bad. I apologize. But that it could really kind of have an effect on the exploitation of people trapped inside our prisons, as well as their relationship with the universities, these major corporations. So, thank you for the struggle you're doing, and let's stay in touch. Please, let's keep writing, and as this thing develops, we want to come back and get a follow up with you all to see how this ended up before the end of this current school year. So it's really been great to talk to you all. You're doing great work. So Ava Kaplan, Jerome, Will Boose, been a pleasure to talk with you all. Keep on struggling and make justice happen. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And please let us know here at The Real News and the Marc Steiner Show what you think. Just go to mss@therealnews.com. You see that spread across the screen. Let me know what you think, what you want to know. And if you're watching this and you're in the midst of a struggle around prison labor and exploitation in your community, on your campus, let us know. And let's put people in touch, because the way you build a movement is getting people across the country to be in touch with one another, which is what we try to do here. And we can end that exploitation. So for the Real News Network, I am Marc Steiner. Take care and stay in touch.